everyone, welcome back to another episode of Future Rock Legends. Probably didn't think there was going to be an episode number 3, but look, here we are. This one is not going to come out, every week, maybe every 6 weeks.
Who knows?
We're really trying to make sure that this is something that we are able to put our attention into, and we don't want to take the attention away from the kids to put the attention into this.
Right. Which
sounds kind of contradictory, but it's working. One of those things that Bethany and I have been kind of like really pushing forward and showing the kids is like, hey, you can't achieve anything unless you like really put yourself out there and try to achieve it. Like, come up with a crazy goal, like something that just seems so outlandish, which has been like the motto of my life, essentially.
Basically.
And make it happen. Like you can't make anything happen unless you try to make it happen. You can't just sit back and be like, oh man, I hope this happens. You
got to go for it. You got to put yourself out there. You got to be seen and be heard in order to be seen and heard.
So we had some weird manifesting, I think, over the past like 6 or so weeks. We had a lot of family visiting town and stuff.
It's gonna get crazier here coming up with the holidays.
Absolutely, but we had a spurt of family coming through, and we had a bunch of cool musical things kind of happen all at the same time. I guess the first one would be Halloween, right? Like your dad came into town.
Yep.
And he's always fun to have in town because he can jam with us. Like we've had him do, play a bass like this is his, amp and stuff behind us. So he'll
right there.
he'll jump on bass and groove with us. But this time I think he listened a lot more than he played.
Because he wanted to hear the progression of how the kids have gone since he was here last.
And but it's still cool that he can rock out and the kids are still like, okay,
Grandpa's still got it.
Grandpa's got it, and we were able to go to Halloween. So Halloween for us looks different, I think, now than for the average family because the way it works in our area is we have this street that just blows up for Halloween.
They call it Halloween Town.
Yeah, and it's like from the 80s, like those old, like you think of like E.T., that scene where like all the kids are just flooding the street on Halloween. That's what this place looks like, and it's so wild that they actually have like stages, like live bands playing on the street in front of people's residential houses.
I mean, they're just people that live in the area, so they're not like
they're not professionals, but it's super cool. So last year, Brian he went as a bass player because he had just started playing bass.
And he thought it was cool.
And he had this I bought a travel amp just so he could do it. I was like, if I'm going to spend money on your costume, how about instead of me spending it on a costume, I spend it on a travel amp.
That way you can carry your bass around
all the time, and you can carry your bass around. He's like, yeah, done.
He's
absolutely
like, good to go. Let's do it.
So last year he got invited on stage, and it was really cool because he was kind of like sitting there at the front of the stage watching these guys. It was really kind of his first time like being cognizant enough and watching somebody other than me.
He'd only been playing for like 4 months at the time.
Yeah.
Like super early in his like music bass playing career. So like.
But he was like, I could tell he was like, okay, Dad told me I got to watch the guitarist and that'll tell me what I got to do. And then by the time like the guys on the band noticed that he played bass, and we're like, hey, you want to come play? And he was like, yeah. Ryan comes up on stage, and the bass player is like, all right, buddy, do you know your notes?
Do you know how to play?
Do you know how to play? And Brian's like, yeah. He goes, okay, do you know the notes? And Brian's like, yeah. He had already figured out what notes he had. The guy was showing Brian the notes, and he was like, okay, buddy, you know what your notes are? And Brian's like, yeah. He goes, okay, the notes are this, this, and this. Brian was like, yeah, I already know it. He goes, are you sure you know it? And Brian's like, yeah, I got it. So the guy's like, all right, whatever, just plug in.
Do you know the song?
And Brian was like, no.
Because they gave him a certain song to play, and
he never played it before. But it's like it was only 3 notes. Is the easiest thing possible. But I mean, mind you, this is a 9-year-old kid at the time. You know what I mean? That had just started playing bass and is getting up in front of probably about 100 people there that night.
Yeah.
With a band for the first time. Well, not really the first time, I guess, because he was playing with the kid band, but like the first time playing with like actual adult musicians other than me.
Right.
And he crushed it. And it was so funny because like you could just tell the energy like that night just totally changed his life. You know what I mean? And Ella that evening went as a zombie.
Yeah.
And she was so upset. She was like, why would they not have me go on stage?
She was like, I can sing.
Why would they not have me go on stage? And I'm like, because you went as a zombie and not a singer like we told you to.
And she was like, but I can sing. I'm like, yeah,
but they
they're
didn't
not
know
going to
that.
know that because you literally went as a zombie.
So this year, she was like, screw all that.
I'm going
as a singer. So she could get up on stage too. So we had a bunch of people that were like, well, we were supposed to go to a party and then your dad came into town.
Right.
So we ended up hanging out with him and his girlfriend. And then we decided to go kind of a little late to it. And we had other people that were wanting to meet up with us too. But our kids' sole focus that evening was not meeting up with friends or getting candy.
They knew exactly where those houses were.
We want to get on stage, like without delay.
Right.
So we got there almost too early, really.
Yeah, it was like completely like daylight.
But by the time we get up there, it's what, 6:30?
Yeah, it was starting to get a little dark.
And they started playing Sublime, and they were like, "We got any Sublime fans in the audience?" And both the kids were like, "Yep." Now, mind you, we had a whole discussion prior to this that, hey, okay, if we get on stage, we're gonna ask them, "Can you guys do Ironic? Can you do any other number of songs that we have practiced and perfected?" We've kind of effed around with Santeria by Sublime.
Right.
But we've never finished it.
No.
Never finished it. Never really got an intro. Just kind of got the groove. We got a little bit of the harmony going because that was what we were working with them on, harmony. But like everything else would have just been them having to piece it together
themselves
on the fly. And he was like, "You guys know Sublime?" And they were like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, we're gonna play What I Got." And he goes, "Can we do Santeria?" And the guys are like, "Yeah, let us finish What I Got first, and then we'll do Santeria." And then so he's pumped, and Ella's sitting off to the side because she had not had contact with the guy yet.
Right.
So I was like, "Brian, you got to ask him, hey, can my sister sing?"
Because he recognized Brian from last year. He was like, "Hey, you got up on stage last year." And he was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You coming back up?" He goes, "Sure am."
So Brian, the second he gets up on stage, goes, "Hey, can my sister sing?"
They go,
and the guy goes, "Can she?" And I was like, "Yeah, she can sing. Actually, you just let her sing harmony, let her sing lead, whatever. Like, just
let her."
And he was like, "Yeah. Are you cool? Can we let her sing?" He's like, "Yeah, we can let her sing."
Right.
So they started, and that little girl started right on cue. There was, it's a downbeat,
it's an odd,
it's a pickup note before you start, and she started right on friggin' cue. And she got it really well. Yeah. And then she got to the point to where she didn't know the song anymore.
Right.
So the guy that was the lead singer that was playing guitar noticed. So he started taking over the vocals to kind of lead through the song. So Ella was like, "Oh, okay, I'll harmonize."
Yeah.
So she started harmonizing with him.
With this guy that she has never sung with before and really just does not know the all the words. So she just was like, "I got it." Don't worry.
But there was a point, I stayed, you'll see, we'll show the video.
Right.
You'll see that I'm really close to the stage. I'm right in front of Ella. And both the kids are locked in on me. Right. Because they're like, "Dad's going to cue me in case I get lost."
Right.
But Ella was cued in on me. And at one point, she just locked eyes like, "Dad, I can't find my note." And I was just like, "Do this." And you see her just close her eyes. And then all of a sudden she's like, boom, she got it.
If she just had to focus. And I think I got the video of you going like this because I was farther back than you. So I was able to get you kind of coaching her, who then locked it. It was pretty awesome.
We got to really utilize a lot of the things that we talk about, which is even if you mess up, we got to push forward, right?
You don't stop and be like, "Oh shoot, I messed up. I missed this one note. Let me Nope. You keep going.
Yep.
Because everybody else is going to keep going.
Yep. Everybody else is going to keep pushing through.
Right.
You can't just stop and redo your part. And that's a tough thing for a lot of kids to understand. When they mess up, they're like, "Well, let me go back and redo it."
Right.
It's like, no, we don't get to do that.
Right.
You got to pick back up.
Keep going.
So that was super cool. And gave the kids just a bunch of confidence again, I think.
Like, they had friends watching, and like, I mean, obviously there was a ton of people there. They were all recording, and then like, so like, whether we knew there was friends there or not, like, people, like, they went to school the next day, and they're like, I saw you.
You know, one of my second favorite part of the night, though, was Brian walked around again with his little amp.
Right.
And we could see, like, part of the reason we do this, right, is we want to inspire other kids to, like, feel as strongly about this
music.
as we do. Because,
Right.
like, video games and all that kind of stuff, that's great. Like, Brian plays too many video games. But he's very well-versed in music, too. Right? He loves it. So we want other kids to feel that energy, that passion. Right. And Brian had these kids coming up to him because he had his little, you know, red bass. And they're like, oh, that's a cool guitar. And they just stare at him. So I was like, hey, Brian, ask them if they want to hear something. Because Brian, it's tough also as a kid to, like,
show off.
To not know if somebody's teasing you or not. You don't want to be like, oh, yeah, this is cool. Check this out.
Right.
So I was like, hey, when somebody comes up to you and gives you a compliment.
It's an adult or a kid.
You ask them, hey, do you want to hear something? Because they're probably coming up to you because
they think it's cool. They're not making fun of you.
So. And he was like, oh, okay. So he started asking people if they wanted to hear something. He started out doing blues line with people. And they were like, whoa. And he had like these groups of kids coming around and stuff. And he was like, whoa, this is awesome.
Right.
And you could tell he was just like, okay, I feel pretty awesome right now.
Right. And I was like, when do I sing? I can't sing with the blues. And she's like, you can tell she was pumped. But
I was like, I had to explain to her. I was like, look, you got to sit in the back right now.
I was like, it's tough.
I will make sure that your time to shine is on stage. And I told Brian, I was like, hey, you're getting the attention right now. Make sure that when we get to the stage, you leave some room for your sister to shine.
And he was like, yeah.
And they both understood. They are good at sharing the spotlight when it comes to that kind of stuff for some reason. Well, that's fine. I'm not gonna argue.
Yeah.
But we told him also, I was like, okay, so I know you can play the blues line, but you can play cool things too. So the next time you come to somebody that's like,
what can you play?
Like, what can you play? And they're like, our age? Go ahead and play Schism by Tool.
Right.
And he goes, oh, okay. The face on those people when he started, they're like, can you play bass? He's like, yeah. And all of a sudden he hits
Schism.
Tool. Like,
yeah.
What?
Like, this one guy was like, hey, like, he was like, that was awesome. And then like they ran into one of their like teachers, and she like took a video of them, and then I guess like showed it to like because that's one of like the specials. So like she showed it to like everybody that she could, because she was like,
it says our kid.
It says our kid, but like she was like, this is cool. And like that there was this one kid that like walked by. He was probably between Brian and Ella's age, and he like walked up, and you could tell like Brian was standing there. It was right after he played Schism, and he goes, I like your bass. And Brian was like, thanks. Like, and you could just tell he just kind of like stood there and just kind of stared at it like, that's cool. Like, that kid is cool. And you could just tell Brian just like kind of played it off like, you know. But that was before we had like fully talked to him about the like, take the compliment, show off. Like, and I think it was when you...
Ella is really good at taking and giving compliments.
Correct.
Because it's something that we've just always ingrained in her for some reason.
Right.
She picked up the giving compliments on her own. Like, she used to just go up and be like, I like your shoes. You know,
or like, I like your shirt or your hair or whatever.
That's just her natural personality.
Right.
But taking a compliment back is really tough. So we've kind of coached them and being just like, just say, thank you so much. I'm glad you liked it. And then you just move on. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be weird. You don't have to shy away or anything.
Right.
Just be sincere. And, you know, it always felt like to me, especially when you get that imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're like, they obviously aren't coming up to me to tell me a good job because I know that I just sounded like crap.
Right. You're like, that wasn't my best.
But that's just anxiety. You know what I mean? And you got to coach yourself through it, because those little moments with people where you thank them or you compliment them are what creates these, you know, connections that in the future will serve them. Right. That's what this is all about, right? Creating the connections, making sure that the kids are all excited about it. So the next weird kind of moment after Halloween came when I had to go to the doctor. As it so happened, on the same day that I was going out to...
Just like an hour before you even left.
An hour before I left, I just happened to accidentally click on Facebook Marketplace.
Right.
And we've been talking for a long time about getting the kids a drum set because they've been watching those Drumeo videos where like Chad Smith, Red Hot Chili Peppers, listens to a song and comes up with a drum beat for it or whatever.
Well, that it's just like the one thing that we're missing.
It is the one thing we're missing, but they've always wanted one. They had one for a while. We had that big set
it was a real one.
Jim gave us.
Yeah.
And we just aren't able to set it up here at this house.
It was huge.
We have a 1,400 square foot house. We came from, essentially 3,000 before.
Right.
It's just not possible. So I accidentally click on Marketplace and I see this drum set pop up and it's for $100. And I'm like,
electric drum set.
It's an electric drum set. And it's not just that, it's a Roland, which having worked in, music stores and stuff, I know that those are
very expensive,
really good. And it was the one that had like the mesh heads and stuff. And it was close to the doctor's office that I was going to, and I was like, this has got to be like a scam because this is a $4,000 drum set, like
for $100.
For $100. I was like, but I'll do it. So I send the guy a message, and he responds. He goes, "Hey, it's yours if you want it." And I'm like, "Oh crap!" And he gives me his address, and it's like 7 minutes or something away from the doctor's office.
It was super close.
And I was, I got my pickup truck. I'm already on that side of the bridge, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And I kind of assume it's still going to be a scam,
right?
So when I get there, it was in this professional like building center. I go to the second floor, and it's a music studio that this guy was. I guess everybody started working from home during COVID, and he just needed to get stuff out. He goes, "I knew that if I listed this drum set for $100, somebody would come get rid of it today." He goes, "The screen doesn't work on it," and I was like, "I really don't even care. Like,
we're like, does it work?
I don't even care about the module. Like, I really just want like the heads, you know what I mean? Like the shells and stuff." And he goes, "Oh no, it still works. You just have to hit F5. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Here's $100. I took it off, and I'm like, well, this is obviously a sign that one of my kids is about to be a drummer because that's the only explanation for being able to get such a deal.
We really were banking it was going to be Ella.
Definitely, Ella has drummer
because
vibes.
She had just done a whole project too for Halloween about Karen Carpenter. And so,
so we were like, Ella is definitely about to be a drummer, and then Bethany gets on the drums.
Yeah,
and she's been watching my old drummer, Nick Harris, for years. I mean, it's just ingrained.
He was just fun to watch.
He's fun to watch, and he's a solid drummer. So you were able to, you could really hear his beats. You know what I mean? And they are ingrained in you at this point because like you just close your eyes and all of a sudden you're like, it's so crazy. And she's got such solid rhythm that it has made such a difference for like the family band in general. Because Brian needs somebody that he can connect with as far as rhythm and drums and stuff. And it's been really cool. We'll put a video of us all jamming.
I mean, I'm not saying
you've been playing for less than a month. I was
like, I'm not like great, but for
less than a month.
It's
having never done anything. I'm content with your ability to already jam with us, and you have the ability to like tune us out and stay on your rhythm, which is important. You know what I mean? It's the same thing that we talk about with Ella when you're singing harmony. You got to be able to listen to that other note without like having it influence you. Right. You know what I mean?
It's tough.
But you've got it down. So. And you've definitely got that imposter syndrome too, because every time I give you a compliment, you're like, no. But yeah. I mean, it's clear that the family is musical in general.
Right.
So I'm very hopeful of, what's going to come. We had a gig at the VFW for Veterans Day, which was cool.
And I remember because I'd been practicing, the drums, but we'd only had the drums like 2 weeks in.
Our mixer wasn't big enough.
The mixer wasn't big enough. And so it was like, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, I just won't play drums. Like, I'll just be the happy mom. Kids are going to get up on stage. I'll be the videographer. And then we told the kids that because we had been practicing with the full band. And then we told the kids like, hey, I'm not going to get on stage. And Ella was like, but we need you. I was like, you don't need me. And like, you'll be fine. And she's like, but like, no, you need to be on stage. I was like, not this time. So I was like, we'll get there. Like, so then you ended up finding this mixer again, Facebook Marketplace.
Well, I feel like the VFW gig is probably a whole nother thing that we should just discuss as far as like one of those weird situations that like just kind of came up at the right time that forced our hand to do things
Right.
that we weren't intending to do. Because back in June, I
Like
think it
way
was,
back, yeah.
I'd reached out to the VFW. And I was just like, hey, I'm a local musician looking to get back into the scene. I like doing military things because we're a Gold Star family.
Right.
If you guys need anybody, let me know. And they messaged me back in like July or something like that.
Yeah, it
they
was
were
like you were just out looking for an acoustic solo gig.
And they messaged me back in July and they're like, hey, we actually wouldn't mind having you. How much are you going to charge? I was like, I'm not going to charge much for you guys. Like, whatever.
You just want to play.
Just want to play. And they were like, okay, well, we're thinking maybe Veterans Day, but we got to like vote on it. We're not going to be able to vote on it until October.
Yeah, it was like
and I was like, okay. So I basically forgot about it. And then in the meantime, between July and October, I had sold our PA system because it was too small.
Right.
Because
the kids were starting to really.
The kids were getting into this thing. So I was like, all right, I'm going to sell this now and I'll wait a few months and I'll get another one. And then, like, literally a day after I friggin' sold it, I get a message from the VFW being like, hey, we went ahead and booked you.
And
I'm like, oh, shoot. So I messaged them back. I'm like, hey, I don't want to, like, bail on you, but, like, I don't have a PA system anymore that can, like, accommodate this. And they messaged me back. They're like, oh, we got one. You just come check it out. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go and check it out, and it was like a stereo system. Like, I could have plugged in a microphone. I could have plugged in a guitar. It would not have sounded good. And the kids wouldn't have been able to play. So I figured out I could use a mixer or something. I was like, I'm going to figure it out because my kids really want to do it. I was like, I'll make it work. And I told them, I was like, hey, you mind if the kids come? And they're like, no, that's fine.
Like, they may only sing a couple songs here or there. I was like,
they're like, no, it's family friendly. I was like, okay, cool. They'll love that. So next thing I know, it starts getting marketed as a Gold Star family band on Facebook.
We're like, uh-oh.
And I'm like, uh-oh.
We're happy about it, but
I'm not prepared for it sound-wise, and that PA system is certainly not prepared for it.
No.
So we had to do some creative, finagling and ended up deciding that we just needed to pull the trigger on getting a PA system.
Right.
Or at least speakers that we could plug our smaller mixer into.
Right.
So we did that. We got a decent deal on the speakers. And then we had the small mixer that we used for the VFW. And the VFW turned out really well. They requested that LS sing, or that I sing, God Bless the USA.
Right.
And I was like, all right, let's do it. Ella, can you learn the harmony?
She was like, yeah.
And she was like, yes. She went in her room, just learn the harmony. And she got it. And I think it sounds beautiful. And we sang it, and we actually had the news, Spectrum TV was like right up there with the camera. And I told Ella, I was like, baby, go milk that camera. Like right up to it, sing right to it. Yeah. But they ended up not airing their thing.
Which was kind of disappointing because the kids were excited. And they had friends there, like, because the kids had the day off of school for Veterans Night. So
I think our sound was a little messed up too.
Yeah, I mean,
because we were realizing that some of the cables that we had that were connecting the speakers weren't giving us full audio and stuff like that.
But we didn't realize it in the moment. It was after we listened to it back. We were like,
yeah, and it was like, it was not ideal. We ended up basically getting the PA system a day before.
Yes, we had no way of
We tried to get it several days prior, but like everybody that I was like messaging was like, oh, I can't do it today.
Right.
So we had like one day of being able to set it up, but it ended up working out. The kids got so many compliments from people. They ended up getting a bunch of tips as well, which they were super excited about. And then I decided, I reached out to the VFW again, and I was like, look, we would love, like, if you guys can just give me a spot, once a month.
Right.
To just bring the kids in. I don't need you to pay me. I was like, you want to give us tips? We'll work on tips. That's fine. But like, it's not even the purpose. Essentially,
it's just getting the kids.
Having a safe public space for kids to be able to come and play.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying that we're going to turn it into like a playground for kids.
No.
It's going to be it'll be a gig. You know what I mean? But like, if we get other kids that want to come up and play,
right?
Hey, you practice with us. Come on.
Or like, having their friends that like, they know in real life, like, coming to their shows with their parents and like supporting them, that was huge to them. I think like they had probably 4 different families show up that day and support them. Maybe it was 3, but like regardless, like
it was a rough gig for me. I hadn't sang in a while. My voice went out twice. Thank God the kids came up and saved the day. You saved the day on one as well.
I helped save the day on
but one. It was like all of a sudden my voice was like, nope, you're done.
Yep. And it was only an hour and a half gig too.
I know. I used to be able to do 4 hours without problem. But to be fair, it was, I have not been singing as much because I've been focusing on other people.
Right.
So that's okay. But that gig was really cool, and I'm hoping that they will let us kind of like continue to
Yeah.
play
Not
around.
experiment, but like obviously because we want to take it seriously, but like they have to start somewhere as far as like getting on stage and getting comfortable and trying
To me,
things
like
out.
a safe space doesn't get much better than the VFW.
Right.
You know, like it is. They're just typically good people, and I played so many of those shows there.
Yep.
And if we can do anything to help them too, like I know what their cause is, you know what I mean? And they got cheap beer.
Yeah.
It definitely makes listening to kids' music a lot easier when there's cheap beer.
Yeah.
So another thing, I think that's basically been all that has happened since our last podcast.
Yeah.
On top of that, we had 2 interviews.
Yep.
And we have a few more that are tentatively scheduled.
Yeah, lined up.
And
hopefully.
What I'm trying to do is kind of explore the kids' musical past, you know, like ancestry, so to speak. Nurture versus nature.
Right.
You know, and then we also talked to my buddy Joe.
Yep.
Who was able to kind of like help me find
influence
me in my music, which is an influence on the kids as well.
Oh yeah.
So I just thought it was fun to kind of talk to him. It's especially fun to talk to your dad,
right?
And find out about like his musical past, because
I don't think I do all of it.
No, I mean, I think I was so into my own musical journey at the time that I just didn't care.
It's not like he'll talk about it, but he doesn't
he didn't
overly talk about it.
Yeah, it's not that I didn't care. I don't want to say that. It was more like I just didn't know to ask the questions or something. You know
I didn't know how serious it was. Like I knew he was in a band, but like I didn't know like the extent of all of it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just cool, like to see that. Hey, the kids do have a history in this. You know, it's 2 generations at least already that have, before them that have, done it at some point for a profession.
Right.
So Terry had some really cool things to say, and we'll drop his interview. Terry, who is your dad. I was playing a lot of music at the time, so I don't think I was really paying attention to like what his musical background was then. Like I knew that you played. You bought an amp from me when I was working in a music store. So I knew that you played, but I didn't fully know the extent of it. And then I think the first time that like I actually went over and you showed me this amp, I was like, holy shit, this guy like actually played, because this is like no joke. And then you pulled out the bass, and I was like, oh my God. So obviously I've gotten to know you much better since then. And
just a little bit, right?
It's obviously also been an inspiration for Brian to play bass, because I mean, how cool is it to be able to play on a Fender Bassman amp? I mean, that's from Grandpa. That's the inspiration. So people are like, well, how long have you been playing? Brian's like, oh, well, like a year, but my dad played and my grandpa played. So, it runs in the family, so that is kind of one of the questions that we have on this whole podcast thing is nurture versus nature. Like, can we track down where the musical talent and gift came from? And your mom is musical.
Yes.
She sings, she does bells, she does choir and stuff. But I also feel like there's a different side of it. Like you've got the musical and the classical side. So she's obviously got the ear for it.
Right.
There's people that will come and they'll become classical musicians because they like to play music, but they don't necessarily want to have the attention or put the energy out with it.
Right.
Our kids feel that energy.
They
want that energy. They want to go out and get it. So can we track the musical talent down, and then can we also track down that like social spark, I guess, is that what you want to call it? Or the ability to get up in front of people, the entertainer in them,
Right.
Where did that come from? So let's start back and let's hear about like your family in music. Where did that come from? Can you track your own spark of music?
My parents, my brother were not so musical. My brother played the guitar a little, and that's probably where I first picked up a guitar. It was his guitar.
Okay.
But where did that spark come from? Well, I guess in, middle school, you pick up a recorder as you normally do, went to trumpet, went to clarinet, went to oboe, and then orchestra in high school, where I guess I started, maybe it was late middle school, we started our first little band. So, and then in high school in the orchestra, I had the long hair, nice flip on my shoulders, and the orchestra leader said you either have to cut your hair or leave the orchestra. So I left the orchestra. So I wasn't going to cut my hair just so I could play the oboe.
That's pretty rock and roll, man.
Yeah. So, and we, I guess we went from there. Changed drummers. I'll tag our drummer, Michael.
All right.
Deaton. So
That's awesome.
he's the only one I think that I'm still in touch with on Facebook.
So what was the name of the first band then?
Heavenly Blue.
Heavenly Blue.
Heavenly Blue. Rumor was there was some kind of medication you could take called Heavenly Blue. I don't know anything about that.
Interesting. We'll have to Google that later.
Yeah. And then after high school, I guess we kind of went our separate ways, and I went with a band called Garfield Air Mattress.
Garfield Air Mattress.
I don't remember any of the names of those guys.
All right.
Moved down to Washington State. This was all in Alaska, by the way, in Anchorage. Moved down to Washington State to go to college. And I was in a country band for a while.
All right.
Don't know their name.
Okay.
So what band was it that you purchased all of your gear with?
Oh, that was with Heavenly Blue.
Heavenly Blue. So how long were you guys together before you started getting to the point of buying this? Because to me, this is like, this is serious gear. Obviously, back then pricing was a little different. But like, if you said you were at the point of you purchased the gear with your band, you went and purchased a vehicle as well, right?
Yeah. So it was probably a year or two before we said, okay, let's upgrade all our equipment. I had a cheapie amp from Sears, probably a cheapie bass from somewhere. And we said, if we're going to progress, we're going to need better equipment.
So how often were you guys playing shows at the time to decide to do that?
Oh, probably every weekend.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
The teen club. There was a club in town, the Lakeside Club. It's gone. Last time I was in Anchorage, it's gone. It's condos now. And I'm sure there are other places. I know we played at the university. We did a battle of the bands. We were written up in the Anchorage Daily Times.
That's pretty cool.
I have the newspaper somewhere in storage. I don't know where.
So do you remember back, what year would this, like 67 you said? 60?
Yeah, I probably bought this stuff in 67, so it's probably going on 60 years now.
Do you remember back then what you would be paid for a gig?
Oh, I'd have to guess $100 for the 4 or 5 of us.
And you'd split that? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that,
gas.
Yeah, there's gas on top of that.
But, we were
too.
all living at home, and that was just a little extra money. And we
Yeah.
could make our payments for the equipment. I think many of us had jobs. I worked at the commissary on the base, and you'd get paid in tips. So for bagging people's groceries.
So how did you learn songs back then? Because you did covers as well, right?
Mostly covers.
Because I remember you gave Brian the goal to learn In-Ya-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Yeah.
So how did you learn that stuff? Did you have to do it by ear? Did you read the notes? Did you?
Sometimes we would go downtown to the music store and buy the book with the notes and stuff, but I didn't really read the bass clef. So I would buy the record. In the old days, you had to put it on, listen to it, and take the needle off and practice that and put the needle back on. Same with the words. Everybody would listen. No, I think he said right. No, I think it was sight, and it took a while. If we had the book, you'd have the words.
I mean, I guarantee you that's why all the music in the 70s was so great, though. I keep going back to that, and Brian will tell you, too.
Yeah.
I think the 70s is like the best, but you got to think about it. There was no easy way to learn it back then, right?
No.
We have tabs and stuff, so Brian can go on, YouTube or Ultimate Guitar, and it's all right there for him. He doesn't have to use his ear.
Right.
So that's the fact that you guys were, using your ear, putting it all together. I mean, that's obviously.
And there was obviously embellishments.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can add a doo-doo-doo in there when they didn't have one. Or they have a doo-doo-doo-doo, and I'm just going to do doot-doot.
Yeah. I'm more familiar with that version where I simplify it instead of overcomplicating it. But, well, that's really cool then. So when you left them, you said everybody kind of split up, went to college, and then you went to this other band. What kind of music did that other band play?
The Garfield Air Mattress?
Yep.
Similar
music.
James Gang, Beatles, CCR, stuff like that.
Nice.
As the decade produced or
Continued.
Yeah. Obviously, the music you play changes. And
Gotcha. So, and then the next band you went to was country. What time frame would that have been?
Oh, that would have been 73-ish.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a little Johnny Cash stuff like that then?
Yeah, Eagles.
Okay.
It was a family band,
All right.
and I was the non-family member. So when
And where was this at?
this was in Ellensburg, Washington,
Okay.
where I went to college. And so when they needed to downsize, of course, I was the non-family member. So I was only in it maybe a year.
They needed to downsize. They couldn't kick one of the kids out, huh?
No.
That's-
So I don't know
that's
if it was
interesting.
kids or siblings. I don't remember all those details. So.
Gotcha.
I was studying and working and had a child or two by then. One was born 71, one 75. So it could have been between the two. So.
Kids will kill the music, man. I'll
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you.
So.
Until it comes back. So with your other kids, did you try to approach music with them at all too?
I think so. We had these sitting in the living room. I hooked them up to my stereo, and we did block parties. I'd put them on the front porch and blast out the music. So.
Bethany is more musical than I expected, and I think more musical than she expected too. And it's one of those things where once I broke it down to her in the way that I explained it to the kids, she's like, "Oh, well, it's not that hard then, right?" Like I got her jamming along with the blues in E. You know what I mean? On an electric guitar, she's slamming it. Like we got Brian jamming on bass. I'm playing the chords.
Like, staring at me
She's
like,
soloing, and I'm just like, okay, so the music it's there. You know, not everybody can just tune in and do it with, just because you have the rules of what notes to play doesn't mean that you can get the feeling going.
But I need the rules.
You needed the rules. That's fine. But you had the feeling too, though.
Right.
You understood the idea of, repeating certain things, and it was just a natural click. And I can tell that both of the kids have it too. And, I think I have it, obviously, to be able to listen to things.
Right.
But to be able to track it down to you also is cool to me. I know that for my family, when we track it back, my family was not musical at all, like my immediate family.
Right.
But my dad's mom was a piano teacher.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So that's got to be the only possible connection I have. My grandmother played a little bit of piano, but there's nothing that was like memorable to me. But like I never even met my meme. So that was like, that had to be a nature versus nurture for me to be able to get that. And that was one of those things that until Joe Ford came along, I don't think that switch could have even been, triggered.
Right.
So one thing that I thought was cool is, and one thing that we go back to also is the ability for music to change somebody's life. But was there a friend that just came along that was just like, gave you that itch all of a sudden? You were like, that's what it was?
I don't have any memory of that.
No?
No, it's just, that was the 60s. You would, everybody wanted to be a rock star.
That's true.
So
you had
start playing a guitar.
You had a lot of inspiration out in the world already too, right? The Beatles would have been kind of going around then, right?
They would have just been started. I think they started at least in this country '64.
Yep.
So and of course the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan and all that.
So you had a lot of inspiration from actual like musicians, and I feel like that's something that our kids lack because when we look at the popular music that's out now, we're looking at like Tones and I, which is essentially a lot of electronic music or everything's produced. So
meanwhile, our kids are still going back to the 90s and they're like those guys.
Yes.
Those are the guys that are the inspiration for our kids. So, and it's very different than 90s versus even now. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, I was inspired by Green Day, Nirvana, and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until like I saw a friend of mine play it that I was like, oh, I can do that too. There was just that switch that turns you from listener to player.
Right. And we're hoping that we can, that our kids can be that for somebody. And we're, that's really like the goal of all of it is to just create all these musical kids just by proxy.
And that's our goal of the podcast too, is to create connections for our kids and other musical kids, by hopefully turning that switch on for other people.
Or kids that aren't musical, but all of a sudden it just kind of clicks and they're like, that's what I want to do.
And there's the roadblock, immediately is hard to get over. And I think that's a fun thing to talk about too, is like to be able to push through, because a lot of people need that immediate gratification for things, and if you don't have the drive or somebody behind you saying, hey, that was really close,
you're like,
keep
try.
going.
Well, your kids have a lot of confidence.
Yes.
They're confident to go up to the counter at a restaurant and say, I'd like some more ketchup.
Yes, they are.
You know? I know Bethany and her sister were very shy. Oh, no, can you get it for me?
Well, that's why we worked on it in particular, because it's something that I can do, but I'm not like super comfortable doing, because I think I'm extroverted when I need to be, but comfortably I'm an introvert.
Right.
And you are comfortably and externally introverted.
Yes.
So
unless there's somebody else that is more introverted than me, then I become the extrovert for them. But I will never do it.
So we made a point to make sure that the kids never had that issue, and I think that has definitely transcended to other things at this point too. Because last night when they had the opportunity to get up on stage, they had no problem. They were right there trying to get up in that dude's ear, and I was like, "You need to wait until he's done with the song."
Right.
Like
they were like, you could tell, like they were both like trying to lock eyes, like, hey. And like I think at one point the lead singer like caught their attention, or like they caught his attention, and you could tell he was like, like, I got it, like give me a second. And then it was like the minute they stopped, they were like, I recognize that dude from last year. They're like,
that's what he said.
Bass. So and Brian was like, yeah, I know.
So did you have the encouragement from your family when you started playing, or how did you?
I don't think my parents encouraged me, but they did not discourage me.
Okay.
Well, it's better than
and
negative.
For some of the earlier days, they had to give me rides until we as a band got our own vehicle. We got a old Dodge panel van of some kind we each went in on.
That's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So supportive still.
Supportive. Yeah,
okay.
supportive.
In their own right, yeah.
So.
Like,
and then
they didn't say, let's buy you the finest equipment on us. Right. They said, if that's
but
what
they
you
also
want to
said,
do.
no, you can't go to. They didn't say, no, you can't go to this. You've got to do whatever. So.
Yeah. I think it's hard for a lot of parents too that aren't musical to know how to support or to know how to say, hey, that's good. They're like, well, why would I, be able to say that? I don't have any, clout for it. So, that's kind of how it was for me, like my mom would always compliment me because she was a music listener, but my dad was not a complimenter,
Right.
So he gave me a compliment one time that was like, wow, when you started music, it was like you were a house league soccer team. And tonight it was like you were a Division I travel team. And I was like, okay, that's a freaking compliment. I'll take that. You know what I mean?
I got it. I understood his analogy.
But I think it's hard for a lot of parents to not do that. And a lot of kids will get turned off immediately because they're like, well, doesn't sound like what I wanted it to.
Doesn't sound good to me, and my parents aren't giving me.
You say, hey, you just got to keep trying. You know what I mean? It's muscle memory. It's every time you play it, it's going to get better just because you didn't try or didn't get it the first time.
Right.
Yeah, but back in those days, I said I started with recorder and trumpet and clarinet. My parents did actually go out. You have to rent those, and they never said no. Okay. I said, okay, you want to switch from trumpet to clarinet? Yeah, well, return the trumpet and get you a clarinet.
Right. So
that's supportive.
Yeah.
See, there's another reason for that, too. I got braces on.
Oh,
it's hard to play the trumpet with braces. So,
yes.
So I had to switch to something of a different form. So.
That makes sense. See, I don't feel like I had that same sort of like encouragement because my brothers were both soccer players.
Right.
So when it came along for me to do strings in elementary school, I didn't even sign up for that.
Right. Because
I was like, no, I'm not going to play music.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden band popped up and I was like, well, I remember the only reason I even was like remotely interested in it because I was just like, I really want to know how those instruments work. Like I want to touch one of those like the brass instruments, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then that just obviously, took off too. Yeah. But I don't know.
It's interesting to see how it all just kind of like tracks. So, I mean, because like I really wanted to play the drums in elementary school, but they said there was too many drummers. You can play the flute instead. So I played the flute. I didn't enjoy playing it. I played it for a little bit. I ended up quitting in the end, but I did it just because I was like, oh, I want to play an instrument. I wanted to play the drums, and I was hopeful that maybe I would still get to, but I ended up not playing the drums.
Yeah, my brothers all told me I was going to be a dork if I played music. So
but that's why I switched from clarinet to oboe. There's too many clarinet players.
Got it.
Who wants to learn another instrument? And I'm like, okay. So oboe.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But in marching band, you can't do an oboe.
Right.
So in marching band, I still did the clarinet, but
Gotcha.
for the sit-down performances, it was the oboe.
All right. Anything else worth mentioning? Any fun stories?
Fun stories. Oh, yeah, there was. I was the youngest one in the band, the Heavenly Blue, and we were doing a lot of our performing. And the drinking age in Anchorage was 18.
Okay.
And so sometimes I was only 17. So one of my bandmates, Andy, he would say, I'm his guardian.
Yeah.
So
That
I could
works.
come in and play.
That's awesome.
If alcohol was served.
We used to have to lie about Beat's age.
Because he was younger.
Yeah, he was younger too.
Not by much, but
Enough.
I guess it was enough.
It was enough. He was the youngest one for a while. He wasn't.
That's right. Okay.
So, but
But
hey,
yeah, they didn't always check our IDs.
Yeah.
They're the entertainment.
that's usually how it goes. Absolutely.
And that's why the other night when we went to the open mic night, it was a restaurant, but it was also a bar. And we knew it was an open mic night, but we weren't sure if they'd let kids perform because they were like, this is people's musical equipment. Like, are they going to let kids play with it? And,
Oh, it wasn't your own equipment.
well, we brought Brian's bass, and Ella had to use the microphone.
I brought
but-
my acoustic.
Yeah, you brought your acoustic. All we had to do was just Brian had to use the cord to plug in. But you just never know
I
if
understand.
people are
Yeah,
gonna
somebody else's
allow
equipment,
kids to come and participate, and they did, and they were great about it, and they were really excited. But it's one of those things where I feel like if they had said no, it would have crushed them. So when they said yes, the kids were ecstatic, and they were like, "Is it our turn? Is it our turn? Is it our turn?" Like they were so excited, they were ready to go. So it was awesome that they were able to participate, even though they were maybe a little too young.
Do you have a most memorable show, like one of your favorite ones?
Oh, geez. Well, it would have to be the one where we were written up in the paper. This was at the Lakeshore Club.
Okay.
I don't remember why, but we were on a roll. We knew we were being photographed. We'd been interviewed beforehand, so
It's pretty cool.
I would say that was cool.
That's
So.
cool.
It's pretty
I
cool.
remember I had my plaid bell-bottom pants on.
Ooh.
Oh, the finest.
Yeah.
You wore the finest outfit.
Yeah.
What kind of places did you play? Was it mainly bars, or did you?
Some bars. Like I say, I know we played at the university there in Anchorage several times, like a dance.
Okay.
This Lakeshore Club, the teen club in on the Air Force Base where we lived. That was probably more often than any place. So.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the Chichaco Club.
Now, Bethany and I intended to make this a two-part interview episode, one with Terry and one with Joe Ford, but we decided after editing these that they both deserve their own episode, so we hope that you'll join us again in a few weeks to listen to our interview with Joe Ford. In the meantime, make sure you support our channel and go check out Future Rock Legends on Instagram and on YouTube, and make sure you follow us on all of the platforms. Thanks a lot for your support.